Hello, everyone. I'm Neena Gopal. Welcome to Global Express. This is where we take a close look at developments in our backyard that have a direct impact on India. We look back at 2024 and the biggest challenges that face India and the world in 2025. Right now, all eyes are on Bangladesh and the crisis of monumental proportions that India simply did not see coming. Former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina Wajid fled from Dhaka to Delhi on August 5th after street protests turned violent and brought the country to a complete standstill. Delhi has given her refuge, just as it has in the past, after the assassination of her father and founder of the nation, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, in 1975. She lived here till 1982. Bangladesh has a bloody history of assassinations and military coups, and one political party settling scores with the other, and vice versa. We are seeing history repeat itself with an interim administration that has no constitutional cover, that has taken power and is allegedly targeting leaders of the ousted Awami League government and police officials, as well as intellectuals and lawyers, many of whom are in hiding or have fled abroad. Equally alarming is the attacks on minorities and the wanton destruction of temples and churches and Sufi shrines and places of worship. The interim government in Dhaka is headed by the hugely respected Nobel Laureate Mohammed Yunus, but Mohammed Yunus has rapidly lost credibility. There are question marks over whether it is Mohammed Yunus who calls the shots or whether real power rests with a troika of students leaders, one of whom is a young 29-year-old named Mehfooz Alam, who reportedly is a member of the banned Hizb Tahrir, which, along with the Jamaat Islami, hijacked the students' protest movement and put a 6-month-long plan since the January 2024 elections that were seen as rigged into action. It now aims to replace Bangladesh's elected democracy, however flawed, with an Islamic theocracy. India has a porous border with Bangladesh, the Teen-Bigha corridor, the Petropol, Dinapol, and other border crossings. India has come alive to the risks posed by a well-armed Hezbollah Tahrir on its borders, the risks posed by infiltration of such jihadi elements, with the post on X by Mehfooz Alam for a greater Bangla, which includes Indian West Bengal, Tripura, and Assam, bringing alive Delhi to the danger posed by this new Bangladesh. So Dhaka has had no compunctions so far in poking the Indian bear, arresting monks from ISKCON. Predictably, it's now demanding that India extradite Sheikh Hasina, who's being investigated along with her son Sajid Joy Wazid and niece Tulip Siddiqui, who's part of the UK government, from what I hear, for an alleged $5 billion nuclear power scam in the Rupur nuclear power project. Bluster, blackmail, we don't know. Talking to us today are three experts in Bangladesh. Syed Badrul Ahsan is a highly respected Bangladesh journalist and author of the biography of the founder of Bangladesh, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, From Rebel to Founding Father. He's previously served as the press minister at the High Commission of Bangladesh in London. He's worked for numerous universities, including the University of Dhaka and the University of Liberal Arts in Bangladesh, as well as being a fellow at the Jawaharlal Nehru University. Welcome to the show, Mr. Ehsan.
Thank you.
Also with us is Mr. Alok Bansal, Director, India Foundation, Secretary General of the Asian Eurasian Human Rights Forum. He was the Executive Director of the South Asia Institute for Strategic Affairs. He's been associated with India's top think tanks, including the Maritime Foundation, because he served in the Navy for 32 years, commanded 2 warships, and served in naval intelligence. He's a prolific writer, author, and commentator. Welcome, Captain Bansal.
Thank you so much.
And last but not least, Ramanathan Kumar, former Special Secretary in the Research and Analysis Wing, our counterintelligence agency. He has first-hand experience of dealing with India-Bangladesh security issues. Welcome, Mr. Kumar.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Good to have you on the show. My first question is to you, Mr. Ehsan. Ever since Sheikh Hasina's ouster, the anti-Indian narrative in Bangladesh has been on the rise, and enough and more evidence of Dhaka and Islamabad growing ever closer. On the sidelines of the D8 summit in Cairo just recently, Pakistan's Prime Minister Sheikh Shehbaz Sharif met Bangladesh's chief advisor, and they promised not just to deepen ties, but Prime Minister Sharif commended Mr. Mohammed Yunus for trying to resurrect Saab. The Bangladesh foreign minister says they want a strategic alliance with Pakistan. Shahbaz Sharif has talked about settling the issues of 1971 once and for all. What more could there be to the tripartite agreement of 1974 when prisoners of war were exchanged between our three countries? Why has the Yunus administration taken such a virulently anti-India stand? There seems to be a move, um, many say, to encircle India with a terror chokehold now. Pakistanis are getting a free pass. They're getting visas which would no longer require security clearances. Flights have resumed between Pakistan and Bangladesh. Shipments from Pakistan are being cleared without any scrutiny. And there is reports now of the first ever container ships docking at Chittagong port, bringing arms, weapons, heroin, cocaine. Mr. Ehsan, the Dhaka Islamabad rapprochement sounds ominous. What do you have to say about that?
Well, as a citizen of Bangladesh, and like me, there are other people in Bangladesh, they are not happy about the way things are developing pertaining to Bangladesh and Pakistan. Because we, since 1971, have been very wary about our ties with Pakistan. Although we have diplomatic relations, we have an embassy in Islamabad, they have an embassy in Dhaka. But as you will realize, uh, in the periods of the non-Awami League governments post 1975 up to 1996, and then again today, these relations have been looked upon with suspicion by the people of Bangladesh for a good number of reasons. Now, you refer to Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif talking about the issues, outstanding issues of 1971, and of course, there was the 1974 tripartite agreement that's there. But of the outstanding issues, what the Pakistanis have not been mentioning, successive Pakistani leaders have been shying away from, is the question of offering a formal apology to the government of Bangladesh over the atrocities committed by the Pakistan Occupation Army in 1971. Now, in Bangladesh, we have had a number of Pakistani leaders after 1971 coming to Dhaka, beginning with Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in 1974. Then we had General Ziaul Haq coming in 1985. Later on, Benazir Bhutto came briefly. General Ziaul Haq also was there. And in turn, to Pakistan went Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, but that was to attend the Islamic conference called by the Pakistan government in February 1974, a day after Pakistan accorded diplomatic recognition to Bangladesh. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's first visit to independent Bangladesh was in June 1974. The topics which were supposed to be discussed were the sharing of the assets and liabilities of pre 1971 Pakistan when
I see.
we were East Pakistan, the country's eastern province. And another subject that was supposed to be discussed with the Pakistani delegation, it was a huge delegation that Mr. Bhutto led, an 80-member delegation. So the second subject that was sought to be discussed was the status of what are known as stranded Pakistanis or Biharis in simple terms. The meetings took place, but then there was no agreement. And the Bhutto government, Mr. Bhutto and his team members, including his Minister of State for External Affairs, Aziz Ahmed, they said these things would be discussed at a time. Our foreign minister at the time, Dr. Kamal Hussain, he pointed out to Aziz Ahmed that at the signing of the tripartite agreement in New Delhi in April that year, the Pakistanis had agreed, had said, if Bangladesh releases the 195 Pakistani military officers earmarked for trial over war crimes and genocide and human rights violation in Dhaka, if they were released, Pakistan would try them these officers on their own soil. That never happened. The
So,
flaw
Mr.
for
Hassan, are you saying that there could be some kind of, sort of rapprochement with Pakistan, sort of, maybe it could even issue an apology? Would that be on the cards at all?
I, they could issue an apology, but so far, no Pakistani leader has issued an apology, and we are not very hopeful about that. Even if you look at Imran Khan, the currently imprisoned Imran Khan, when he was in opposition, he mentioned the fact on different television interviews in Pakistan that the Pakistan army committed atrocities, gross atrocities in Pakistan. But when he was in power, he never said, he
Not
never raised
one
that
word.
matter again. Obviously, because there's a powerful Pakistan army which prevented him from saying that. So when Mr. Shehbaz Sharif talks about these outstanding issues, these are the issues that matter. And as far as we are concerned, ties with Pakistan, I mean, they have not been looked upon favorably in Bangladesh because of the fact, apart from the apology question, Pakistan has always tried to pass off the 1971 war as a conspiracy between India and certain Bengali leaders. That has never been accepted by a large majority of Bangladesh population. Now, what the government, present interim government of Yunus is doing, they are trying to be very friendly with Pakistan in the same way that we had another unconstitutional regime in 1975 led by Khundukar Mushtaq, who was in Sheikh Mujib's cabinet as commerce minister. He took power after Mujib's assassination. When Sheikh Mujib was assassinated, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was quick to recognize his government and also acknowledge go for a recognition of what he called the Islamic Republic of Bangladesh in August
Ah,
1975.
see.
It was never an Islamic Republic, it never is, but Bhutto he was very, very happy about it. So in the same way, Pakistanis are happy these days. But let me, before I come to the end of this segment, let me also point out the fact that during Sheikh Hasina's time, she went for action against the local collaborators of the Pakistan army in 1971. And they belonged largely to the Jamaat Islami and some to the Muslim League. And they were all tried under the International Crimes Tribunal in Dhaka. Uh, and they were led to the gallows. They were executed. When they were executed, the government of then Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif passed a resolution in the Pakistan National Assembly condemning these executions and describing these executed people as patriotic Pakistanis who had simply defended their country in 1971. They never mentioned their war crimes. So these things also rankle with Bangladeshis even now. So whatever the Yunus government is doing, it is doing on its own, and its advisors, as you said, the troika of these young advisors, they are in fact adding to the mess because when they talk of a larger Bengal, Greater Bangladesh, now that is not only laughable, but more seriously, that also complicates relations between India and Bangladesh. The sad thing is, no step has been taken by the Yunus government to condemn these statements by its own advisors or to have them leave the government. They're still there. And that only leads to a deterioration of ties. Mr. Vikram Misri, the Indian Foreign Secretary, has been there, and one had expected that matters would settle down. But now they've taken another route, and I think the Indian the route is one where the government is trying to be very friendly with Pakistan. No problem,
That's
we
right.
can be friendly with
In fact,
Pakistan at
in
the same
fact,
time. But then,
your government's law advisor, Mr. Ehsan, has also
yes,
said something. He said that India was no more than an advisor in 1971. So India's role at that time in calming out Bangladesh was nothing less than a body blow for Pakistan, from which it still hasn't recovered, I think.
that is a complete and unabashed denial of the truth. India was
That's
much
true.
more than an advisor. India gave us political, moral, and military support. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi traveled the entire world, Europe, and the West, arguing our case, the case for
Yeah,
Bangladesh, and the case for the
that's
release
right.
of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. And when advisors so the problem is among the advisors today, I mean, people they're speaking in different voices. Where it is a
Mm,
subject of foreign policy, it should be the foreign affairs advisor to speak on it. But if the law advisor, or if a food advisor, or if an agricultural advisor, talks on subjects which are not part of their remit, that creates the problem.
very
So,
true. If I can go to the former RANW officer, Mr. Kumar, who served in Bangladesh, could you spell out how India managed the anti-India narrative during the regimes of General Ziaur Rahman and Khaleda Zia? And what can we expect in 2025 with this newfound fraternization between Dhaka and Islamabad? How much of a security risk is it in terms of the instability that could be created in the Northeast? particularly in West Bengal and Tripura and Assam. How vulnerable are we in the East?
Well, the risk is very real, considering the fact that there is a long and unfortunate history to all this. Now, you referred to the narrative. I am not too sure about the narrative, but this much I can say that there has definitely been an ebb and flow, in the security dynamic between India and Bangladesh for over a very long period of time. One can go right back to, the time of East Pakistan when the ISI used to, give shelter to the Mizo and the Naga rebels in the Chittagong hill tracts and then send them via Myanmar to all the way to China for training. And then, of course, in 1971, during the Liberation War, these camps were uprooted from there. And then, of course, during the halcyon days of the Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's government to begin with, things were all right. But then again, after the unfortunate developments of 1975, and after the General Ziaur Rahman's government came to power, and thereafter during General Ershad's time, yes, it is a fact that the old paradigm, in a sense, reasserted itself. And again, you talked of our insurgents from the northeast. They began to take shelter in Bangladesh. And then I'll sort of quickly go forward to the late 1990s and the early 2000s. That is when all this really began to,
Came to a boil.
hit us in the face. Uh, Say between 2001 and 2005 6, there was a particular dispensation in power at that time in Bangladesh. And that was the time when all the insurgent groups from the Northeast, be it ULFA or the NDFB or the UNLF, there are so many of these groups, they all found shelter in Bangladesh. Almost every jihadi attack in India, be it the attack in 2005 on the Ram Janmabhoomi temple complex in Ayodhya, which was
And
fortuitously
there was one
foiled,
at the Indian Institute of Science here in Bangalore.
the Indian Institute of Science, the Sarojini Nagar blasts at the heart of New Delhi. They all inevitably, invariably had a Bangladeshi footprint. Uh, Even 2611, there was a tangential Bangladesh angle to it. The main plotters were in touch with a representative of theirs in Bangladesh. So that was the situation prevailing then. And then cut to 2008, 2009, we witnessed a dramatic sort of turnaround in the situation. And we had 15 to 20 years of, uninterrupted peace, where many of these groups were once again evicted lock, stock, and barrel from Bangladesh. And it led to a tremendous improvement in the security situation for India. And in fact, it was that turnaround in the security relationship, which had a transformative effect on the entire gamut of Indo-Bangladesh relations. And now, unfortunately, again, we see things heading
We're back
southward.
to the same situation. Yeah.
You talked of this, this wild and reckless statement about, greater Bangladesh or whatever it is coming from. Now, it's all right, or one can understand if some of these statements come from fringe elements, but these are not fringe elements. These are people at the center of power in Bangladesh. Now, if these kind of statements are made, then certainly the Facebook page may be deleted, but the damage has been done,
You're
and it
right.
once again raises the ghost or the specter of all the things that have happened in the past. Now, sort of reviving themselves. So the risk is very real, and if the powers that be in Dhaka don't watch out, then there could well be a relapse of the old sort of paradigm, and one very much hopes and wishes that doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. You should say that because I think it is slipping back to what it was in 2008 and so on. So, but on the issue of the revival of SARC, the South Asian Association of Regional Cooperation, and the proposal by Pakistan's Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif that Mohammed Yunus should host it, would that be a huge embarrassment for India, Captain Bansal? Was India right to abandon SARC purely because of the ruptured ties between India and Pakistan? Because on ties with our neighbors, India has been working very hard to rebuild ties with Sri Lanka. It's done very well with the new president, Anurag Kumar Dissanayaka. And in the Maldives, they've sort of brought back, good ties, resurrected the old ties that we had with the anti-India President Muizu. Should we do the same with Mohammed Yunus's dispensation, or is it beyond redemption? I mean, what exactly explains this anti-India tirade that's coming from Mohammed Yunus? Is it because we backed Sheikh Hasina in the way that we did? Did it upset the ordinary Bangladeshi, or did it upset, certain elements in Bangladesh?
See, as far as SARC is concerned, we need to be very clear as to why SARC got disrupted. In 2005, we had created a roadmap for SAFTA, which had to pass through South Asian Preferential Trade Agreement. But one country refused to work on the basis of negative list. It continues to trade with India on positive list. Whatever Pakistan committed, it did not comply with it. So there was no point actually going forward when one of the members is not likely to make any progress. SARC had become actually just a talking shop without any worthwhile results being yielded. As far as talking to Bangladesh is concerned and Mr. Yunus's so-called government is concerned, I have serious problems. Firstly, this government is not a legitimate government. There is no law, there is no section of international law which legitimizes this. There is no section in Bangladeshi constitution which legitimizes this. Now, to my mind, sending foreign secretary to Dhaka itself was flawed. You have actually provided a veneer of respectability to this so-called illegitimate government. Why should we talk to them?
That's a very interesting point.
That's a point. As far as I am concerned, Sheikh Hasina continues to be the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. She was an elected Prime Minister, and she is an elected Prime Minister because the parliament has been dissolved. Now, in that sort of a situation, till the time she resigns, she continues to be the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Why do we need...
Are you saying that she hasn't resigned?
Absolutely. She has very categorically stated that she has not resigned. The president has said that he has not seen the resignation letter. Now, in that sort of a scenario, this is actually a concocted story. The regime or the people who are holding power in Bangladesh have no legitimacy, no legal validity under the international law. So why should we negotiate with them? Actually, this regime is nothing but a facade that provides some sort of a respectability to closeted Islamists. My information that I get from Dhaka tells me that elements affiliated with Jamaat, Harkatul Ansar, Hizbul Tahrir are actually capturing one organ after other of the government. And in fact, if we have to do something, we need to do it fast, because by each passing day, these radical Islamists are getting stronger and capturing powers. They're capturing levels of power by each day. And it will become very difficult to dislodge them if we don't do something now.
What does that something entail, Captain Bansal? What would that entail?
I think you have a legitimate government. There is somebody who is illegal, who has usurped the power. I think the ideal thing would be to start a liberation war again. I think a time has come for a second liberation war, because this regime wants to make it again a colony of Pakistan. They actually wants to make Bangladesh an adjunct of Pakistan, probably an outpost. I don't think so. That's what most Bangladeshis would like. And that's why this regime is unwilling to go for elections. They want reforms, reforms, and reforms. Today, I was talking to the press secretary of so-called Mr. Apurva. He says that The earliest we think of elections is in December 2025, but if we go for extensive reform, it may be middle of 2026. So they are taking a
Oh,
leap
that's
out of
very interesting. So you mean they're pushing it forward from December 2025 to June 2026?
That's what I'm trying to say. And that also is optimistic because these people are nothing. They have actually taken the leaf from the Pakistani dictators, where every Pakistani military ruler who came to power promised elections within a certain period of time and then went on to rule for 9 to 11 years. Now, so that is what is the role model because they know that the people do not support them, period. So, since they don't have a popular support, can Mr. Yunus win an election? Has he ever won an election?
Yeah,
No.
he doesn't have a popular mandate
His
either.
respectability is all sponsored by Clinton administration, Clinton Foundation, the United States, and the West. Is he so popular in Bangladesh? If he was so popular, he would have won an election. I don't think so. He can get elected for a parliamentary seat, leave aside for a president's post. So,
Very well put.
so why are we actually talking to him? To my mind, that's absolutely wrong. Why should we be talking to him? I think a time has come when government of India should actually legitimize the outgoing government. We have people here who have poor people are escaping, and this regime is on a has started as a series of vendetta. You see the foreign minister Abdul Momen, Dr. Momen, 7 murder cases have been slapped on him. Even his wife has been slapped with a murder case. Is that some legitimate system? There are so many
That
people,
is true.
so many people who are worried about their lives, who are actually floating around in India and other places. The poor people have no place to go. Their parents, their family members are telling, don't come back because if you come back, you will be slaughtered. Now, what do those people do? Their visas are expiring. Some of them are have come in illegally. How do they go back? So we have a serious problem. And this regime, please understand, with each passing day, it will become more strident, more anti-India. And if Bangladesh emerges as another Afghanistan, as long back a famous Indian journalist has published a book, we have a problem because all these organizations, Hizb Tahrir, Harkatul Ansar, even Jamaat for that matter, have linkages with international jihadi organizations. And Gulshan Bakery incident had shown that radicalization had seeped into Bangladeshi polity very deep. I think we need to eradicate. Can you have an Afghanistan next to you? A Talibanized Afghanistan? No. I think the Americans realized to their horror that this
What they've
sort of a
allowed
thing
to
cannot
happen.
space and exist anywhere. And here it is something like that which is emerging just on our next door. So is it desirable? We have
Yeah.
Bangladesh is extremely important. Many people in India don't realize how big Bangladesh is in terms of population. I think
Yes.
international community often doesn't realize that. And I have no doubts. And in fact, one of the regime supporter, in fact, mentioned it to one of the Western journalists that even if we have elections today, 20 to 30% people will vote for Sheikh Hasina irrespective of what she has done. So if that is the perception that there is already a 30% support for Awami League, what are we barking up the wrong tree? Why are we trying to legitimize somebody who can't even win 1% of the vote? Are we trying to legitimize Jamaat, which opposed the creation of Bangladesh? That's what it is. So the elements are Jamaat. See, the fact is, students may have had genuine grievances, but the leadership was actually usurped by Jamaat and the radical Islamists.
That's right. That's right.
Army is not part of this. Please understand. Army is
Yes.
actually standing by. The only
On the
problem with
sideline.
army is it is led by an incompetent general who actually rose just because of his proximity to the powers that be. And
Yeah.
he didn't know how to handle this problem. The power got lost because of that. And I think a time has come when some stock taking needs to be done. We need to do something. We need to move forward.
That would be very interesting if we actually went back to 1971. Mr. Hassan, if I can come back to you, this is a question which has been, which has taken a lot of interest. Everyone is very, very interested in where the Hezbollah Tahrir emerged from. How did the Jamaat-e-Islami have such a hold on the people if they do? Who are these people? The Hafazat Islam, the Al-Qaeda, Islamic, State Khorasan. How did they get, Al-Harkatul Ansar, as Captain Bansal said? How did they, Jamaat-e-Islami, how did they get, a hold in a country which has always been seen as very secular, as, and despite the number of madrasas where the Quran is taught, somehow did Bangladeshi authorities miss the big picture? Did India miss the big picture? Because we hadn't, did we know about the terror sleeper cells that were actually, being put in place by the Hizb Tahrir?
Yes, about the rise or the emergence of these people. They've come out of their caves now after the 5th of August. These people were there. And the first point that needs to be made here is that these elements, these communal elements, they've always had the backing of countries, Muslim countries, particularly in the Middle East, and of course, Pakistan. It would not do to think that since 2009 until August 5, the ISI in Pakistan was inactive. No, it was very much active. It remained active. So, as these Middle Eastern countries were active after 1971, they went all out to undermine Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's government, and these people were also there. But then in
Yeah,
addition
General
to all
Ziaur
this,
Rahman, I think, made a tour
yes,
of the Middle East. I remember interviewing him
to the Middle East,
at
and you
that
see
point.
these people over the decades, these elements, these I call them denizens of the dark, they have been getting the freedom to emerge from their caves slowly and gradually. In General Ziaur Rahman's regime, you see, as a dictator through dictatorial fiat, he did away with two stipulations, two of the four principles of the constitution: secularism and socialism. In place of
Okay.
secularism, he mentioned the name of Allah. So that was the first point, the first move in turning Bangladesh into a Muslim state rather than a Bengali republic. Then came General Hussein Muhammad Ershad. He imposed Islam as the religion of the state. Now that was another dangerous step towards desecularizing the country. And of course, General Zia, Hussein Muhammad Ershad, and Khalda Zia, their administrations were definitely they had this proclivities toward setting up an Islamic or Muslim-centered society. When Sheikh Hasina came back in 1996 is different, but I'm talking from 2009 onwards. What she did, which we feel, many of us feel, she should not have done. In 2013, when the Hifazat-e-Islam undertook a program to destabilize the government in Dhaka, Sheikh Hasina went for an appeasement policy, and she
Mm.
she she met the leader of the Hifazat Islam, who is by now dead, and reached a deal with him. Then, over the years, the government sanctioned the creation of madrasas. Now, the country has too many madrasas, so these madrasas have been set up, in so very many ways. Then, of late, the government, Sheikh Hasina's government, went for moves that resulted in the creation of more than 600 what they call modern mosques. The money for these
Mm.
mosques came from Saudi Arabia and some from other Islamic countries. Now, apparently, Sheikh Hasina's government thought that pleasing or appeasing these elements would garner her the vote of Islamic extremists. They did not. In the end, we have seen how these people have been operating since August 5. So these problems have been there, and now what we have in our hands is a terrible situation when people are talking of an Islamic form of government, Islamic form of administration, Islamic way of life. Students at Dhaka University, women students, they've been threatened unless they wear the hijab, that sort of thing. These things have sort of undermined the very ethos of Bangladesh as we saw it in 1971 to 1975, and then from 2009 up to now. Now, to come back to the point raised by Mr. Bansal a few minutes ago. Yes, first of all, about SARC. See, SARC,
It was a
it can only be
dinosaur.
it can be revived only with India's support. You cannot have an organization in South Asia by ignoring the largest country in the region, and also a global power like India. So that is impossible. Mr. the Pakistanis have always had the illusions about such organizations being set up against an anti-India bias all the time. Because see, I recall as a school student in 1965 and 1971, we were taught bad history. We were taught history where the Hindus were bad, Muslims were good. One Hindu soldier was equal to 10 Hindu, one Muslim soldier was equal to 10 Hindu soldiers. So that narrative is still there. So this regional organization, any regional organization in the region that has to be established will have to include India. And I would say personally, as a Bengali, as a citizen of Bangladesh, we should we should have an organization which ignores Pakistan, because Pakistan is a dangerous element in the region. And the second thing is about Prime Minister, about Sheikh Hasina's status. Yes, Mr. Bansal was right. I fully agree with him. A lot of people in Bangladesh agree with him. She is still the legitimate prime minister of the country. She has not resigned, and again, she has not fled. This wrong narrative has been put out that she has fled. No, she was placed in a helicopter by the army, then taken to an army military base where she was put in an air force plane, which took her to Delhi. So she didn't flee. The Marcos has fled, the Rajapaksas fled, Ashraf Ghani in Afghanistan fled. So these people fled. This Bashar al-Assad fled. Hasina never fled. She was just put on the plane by the military and flown to India.
Sent out.
So she
That's
still
great. That's a
she,
good.
she
That's a
remains
good. That's a very
yes.
good point.
She
Nobody
remains the
looks
prime
at it like
minister.
that. Yes.
The procedure for the resignation of a prime minister in a parliamentary system, as all of us understand, the prime minister should have gone to the president, submitted her resignation to him. She was never allowed to go to the president, so she didn't sign any resignation letter. So when she went to India on the 5th of August, I would say it was the prime minister of Bangladesh who went to India, and so this this issue of Sheikh Hasina's not having resigned has had feathers ruffled within the interim government. In a month ago, they were all clamoring when the president said he didn't have any record of Sheikh Hasina's resignation from
That's
prime
right.
ministerial office. See, everybody pounced on him, and everybody demanded, especially these young student advisors. They even had a sit-in at before Bongo Bhavan, the presidential palace, demanding that he resign. But the good thing is, the president has stuck to his guns. He has not resigned. Again,
So
the other
where
point
does
is
that actually leave Sheikh Hasina? Because now that the Dhaka is the Yunus administration is pushing every day for her for her to be brought back to the country to face trial. I mean,
Mhm.
can India stand up to that kind of pressure? Will India be tough about this? You think, Mr. Hassan?
I think so. I think India will take a definite and definitive stand here, because if when this government wants Sheikh Hasina's repatriation, extradition,
Extradition.
from
But there is one comment being made that anyway the trial is underway, and that until she's actually charged, she doesn't they cannot really even prosecute her.
exactly. So because see, there are points in Sheikh Hasina's favor. First of all, she has been undergoing a sort of media trial again through the backing through the support of the interim government. See, these days in Bangladesh, every newspaper is full of news reports which are anti-Hasina, anti-Awami League. The other narrative is not being expressed because pressmen, the media are not. There's the other point. A few days ago, in fact, a couple of days ago, one of these young advisors, Nahid Islam, who is in charge of the information ministry, he
Yeah.
said plainly that Sheikh Hasina will be brought back to Bangladesh and she will be marched to the gallows. So the
Yes,
decision has
I
already
saw
been
that.
made. So see, so that is there. And finally, Sheikh Hasina, I don't think she will be extradited because despite the extradition agreement, because there are strong grounds to believe that the prosecution of the prime minister will be will falter because of the feeling that the cases against her are politically motivated, the cases have been decided against her, and even a judgment has been delivered against her. So I don't think, even the other day, in fact, yesterday, I was listening to some comments on Al Jazeera by some of our Bengali experts, and one of them was an Indian, and they were all in favor. They seemed to be talking about the extradition, but the facts were not very clear. So I think yes, no, Sheikh Hasina cannot be extradited. I think she'll stay on in India, and optimistically, I think the time will come when this government will realize it has to give way. It has to give way to politics and politicians, and once it does that, I mean, the other parties are there. The BNP, the Jatiya Party are there. We're not talking about of the Jamaat Islami, because the Jamaat Islami has never won an election in Bangladesh or even in Pakistan. But then, for politics to resume, it's very important that the Yunus government or whoever is in charge, I mean, you can't say who is in charge now, they have to deal with the Awami League. The Awami League has to come back in whatever. Awami League, of course, has to reinvent itself, has to have a proper leadership in place, whether it be Sheikh Hasina,
Well,
but Sheikh Hasina has to be
let's see
there.
where that leads.
Yeah.
Let's see
Yeah,
where that leads. If
and
I can
that is
bring you
important.
in, if I can bring you in, Mr. Kumar, on this very interesting proposal that Captain Bansal has made, that we should, recreate Mukti Bahini and, a force, to recreate 1971, some on those lines. Is that even possible? I mean, because we now will have, and we'll be seen as we meddled in Sri Lanka, with the deployment of the IPKF. 1971 was a huge success story for India. It's a huge notch on our poll, but would we be able to get away with something like that? I mean, in this day and age.
May I put it somewhat
Slightly differently.
differently?
Yes.
2024 obviously is not 1971, that goes without saying. Let me just say that I think what India can, and I'm sure should be doing in these, or can do in these circumstances, without anybody taking any objection, is to work with our objective allies in Bangladesh, and there is no shortage of them, the enlightened sections of the citizenry. Syed Badrul Ahsan is a sterling example of those enlightened elements of Bangladeshi society who uphold or believe in the real values of the liberation war of 1971, updated in a modern context, who believe that India and Bangladesh, it is their destiny to grow together, and that Bangladesh does not gain anything at all from adopting a perpetually confrontationist posture towards India. That mindset, that negative mindset, I call it, in fact, the Pakistani mindset or the ISI mindset. I think both Mr. Bansal and Mr. Badrul Ahsan have referred to it in their own ways. You see that there is a section or there is a school of thought in Bangladesh, and this is assiduously fanned by the Pakistanis and other countries which have adversarial relations with India, that somehow India is dominating Bangladesh, and for Bangladesh to prosper and grow, it must somehow give India a bloody eye or put India on the defensive. Now, this is unfortunately a viewpoint that is even upheld by certain segments within the establishment, I would call it very broadly, in Bangladesh. But and this is the negative mindset that we have to work against. And you can work against that, as I said, by working with the enlightened segments of Bangladeshi society. And this goes, frankly, beyond one political party. There is a view, there is criticism that India often tends to, put its eggs only in one basket and favor the Awami League. That is not the case. There are other political parties. There are a whole lot of intellectuals out there, opinion makers, so on and so forth, who genuinely believe that India and Bangladesh have to work together and grow together. And this is the only way forward. And we should work with these elements of Bangladeshi society, with these sections of Bangladeshi society, and nobody can take any objection to that.
But how much of an impact did Pakistan have on creating these terror cells? Mr. Badrul Ahsan has said that they were all set up through the years. How much of that infiltration, the threat of infiltration, does it still exist on our borders, Mr. Kumar?
Well, it certainly exists, and I think I'm not spilling any secrets when I say this. I think there is enough and more information that is available in the public domain. As Mr. Badrul Ahsan correctly said, it's not that the ISI was inactive all these years. They've had their phases of activity when they felt that the circumstances are right for them, when they feel when they've had a fertile environment for the mischief that they've done. That is when they've been able to exploit Bangladeshi territory for mounting terrorist attacks in India. Yes, operatives have come from Pakistan. They've come through Bangladeshi territory. They've done their mischief in India and gone back the same way. People have gone from Bangladesh to Pakistan for training. They've come back to carry out attacks in India. So all these are, of course, the ISI's sort of stock and trade. This is exactly how they have exploited Bangladeshi territory, whether it is with the help of the jihadi groups, the transnational Islamic terrorist organizations, or even our insurgent groups from the Northeast. We had, for instance, the 2008 attacks in Assam just before 26/11. In fact, they were considered to be the second most deadly attacks in India after the 1993 Mumbai blast. Still, of course, they were overshadowed just a few weeks later by 26/11. But that was done by the NDFB from Bangladesh. And it had all the NDFB leadership was very much in touch with the ISI representatives in Bangladesh at that point of time. And let's also not forget incidents like the Chittagong Arms Haul, which took place in 2004. There was a huge consignment of weapons that was fortuitously sort of intercepted in Bangladesh. And those weapons were meant for the Indian insurgent groups from the Northeast. Many years later, it was discovered that there were possibly multiple consignments which had landed up in Bangladesh. And these weapons had, from Chittagong, they had been dumped in areas close to the India-Bangladesh border, meant for eventual use in the Northeast and other parts of India. So these are documented facts, and these dangers are very, very real. These things can happen again.
That's very interesting that you should bring up Chittagong Port. Captain Bansal, you served in the Navy. Would you like to tell us about the danger that a port like Chittagong, if it is taken over, it's already being run by the Chinese, but now that the Pakistanis are sending their container ships to Bangladesh, which allegedly has arms, ammunition, heroin, cocaine, meth, do you think that there's any way that the Indian Navy could forestall, Chittagong port and other ports being co-opted by the Pakistani ISI to, launch these kind of, attacks on India at all?
See, firstly, Neena, let me clarify some things. Since you attributed certain statements to me, let me clarify this. I did not say that we'll create Mukti Bahini. We did not create Mukti Bahini.
We didn't.
Bangladeshis created Mukti Bahini. We only provided them moral support and other support.
And training.
I am not talking about creating Mukti Bahini. There are enough people in Bangladesh, there are enough nationalist, enough pro-liberation elements within Bangladesh to create Mukti Bahini. The only thing we have to do is to tell that we recognize the government headed by Sheikh Hasina as the legitimate government of Bangladesh. Bangladesh's president is there, Bangladesh's army chief is there. They will have to take a call thereafter. I'm sure.
That's a very good clarification. So you're actually saying that the first political move by India should be to say that we still continue to recognize Sheikh Hasina as the Prime Minister of Bangladesh.
There are adequate elements within the army and within the government in Bangladesh who are pro Awami League and pro liberation, who are uncomfortable with this creeping Islamization of the society. And as I said, that support is there. The moment you have a foothold in any part of Bangladesh and a legitimate government, you will see the security forces changing over. Because all said and done, army chief is not anti-liberation. He's only incompetent. That's all. Nothing else. So that's what I'm trying to say. I've had the occasion to meet some of the sacked generals who were sacked after 5th August and spoken to them. And I have reached a conclusion that this is the situation. We only need to do something about it. That's all. And that's what I wanted to say. As far as Chittagong port is concerned, well, it's an important port. Any place in Bangladesh, if it is with anti-liberation elements or rabid Islamist or jihadi terrorist, is a danger. But anything that has to come to Bangladesh, bulk of it will have to come through the Chittagong port. If required, Indian Navy can blockade Chittagong port like a child's play, actually. It's not a very difficult process. But that requires a political will, and that would be against the international norms. See, what this government has done is earlier anything that was imported from Pakistan had to be inspected. There were rigorous provisions for inspection of the goods that were imported. Now, this government, in its newfound bonhomie with Pakistan and anti-liberation idea, where people are talking of creating a confederation and federation or something of giving new nomenclatures for a Pakistani colony, where people are doing away with all these requirements. I don't think so. We need to do anything as far as port is concerned. Port is a serious danger, but doing anything to the port would probably not be legitimate or according to the international law. What we need to do is to ensure that this setup that has been established by outside powers is actually removed from this country, and that's what is required. I think anything else that we are trying to do, if we think that by talking to Mr. Yunus or his so-called setup, we will we will bring back Bangladesh to a secular democratic structure, I think we are living in fool's paradise.
Yeah,
This
I agree.
has no intention of conducting elections. Please understand, this is dominated by Islamists who are capturing power, and they know they cannot win an election today. So they will wait till they reach a position when they can capture power. And this is what we need to understand, that this is nothing but a closeted jihadi elements who have actually captured power.
But also, that's very well put, Captain Bansal. Mr. Hassan, if I can come back to you, could you tell us a little bit about the history of Mohammed Yunus? Because I heard that as far back as 2007, he actually had political ambitions. He did want to float a political party. Is he going to be able to do that now? Is that what he wants to do? And
Well,
as
yes.
Captain Bansal said, he doesn't have a popular following, so he won't win an election if it's held today. But if you could just give us a brief, because we are running out of time.
I'll make it. Yes, of course. Mohammed Yunus, Professor Mohammed Yunus, won the Nobel Prize for Peace in 2006, as we know. In 2007, when we had the last caretaker government, which was backed by the army, it came to office on January 11, 2007. Political activities were banned. A state of emergency was clamped on the country, and no political parties could take part in activities of that kind. But then Professor Mohammed Yunus, at one point in 2007, he said he was going to form a political party. And a lot of people were enthused about the idea, including some very prominent newspaper editors who backed him. One newspaper editor in Bangladesh, the Prothom Alo, its editor, in fact, wrote an article, a front page article, asking the two ladies, Sheikh Hasina and Begum Khalida Zia, to quit politics. This was in line with the policy that the caretaker government was fostering. Was at the time the policy of -2 means -2 means these two
Minus
ladies
two.
-2. So, and Professor Yunus intended to form a political party. At that time, people said that it was going to be a king's party. But then, a short while later, about a month or two later, Professor Yunus, meanwhile, he had gone abroad, he came back to the country, and then he said he had abandoned the idea of forming a political party after all. So, again, he's back. So, his backers are planning a new party. Well, he has not publicly said anything about it, but the idea is that they will ask him to lead the political party. But I don't think that will happen because back in 2007, not only did Yunus plan and abandon his program, there was another politician, Firdaus Ahmed Qureshi, who also formed a political party during that time. That also faltered. That did nothing. So in Bangladesh, the parties which have mattered in Bangladesh over the last 3 decades and more are basically the Awami League and the BNP. So no matter who forms what party, it's irrelevant and it won't hold water because the Awami League and the BNP are there. And when elections take place, these are the two parties which will be contending for power.
So, if I can have concluding remarks, because right now the Bangladesh economy also seems to be tottering. You have all these garment factory manufacturing buyers who are quitting Bangladesh. You have people, the main leather industry, the handbag makers, all of these designer, companies are basically leaving. Why is that? What is the reason that they are leaving Bangladesh? Are they under are they being threatened by these Islamist groups, or what is it that is and if I could also, if I can have one of you talk to me about whether India's northeast being vulnerable also affects the our plans to have open access to Southeast Asia. But firstly, can you just tell us about the economy, Mr. Ehsan? Why is it floundering?
Well, the economy has been quite a good length of time, but especially after the 5th of August, when these problems, this mob violence has been taking place, and in a number of industries, these owners are now facing their comeuppance, if I may put it that way, because they've not been paying their workers very well, and almost everywhere you go, you see these workers demonstrating against their own owners, against their factories. So that is one thing. That's the important thing, which has led to the closure of a number of these factories. They have not closed down, but for the time being, they have suspended their activities. Firstly, because they can't pay their people. Secondly, because they're afraid of the agitation. And the third element, this factor, these garment producers have not been able to provide to meet the demands of their sponsors of buyers abroad, and these buyers have reportedly been shifting their demands to places like Vietnam and Thailand. So there we have this problem, and the foreign reserves that we had during during the last few minutes, last few months of Sheikh Hasina's time, that had also come down, but it was $19 million. That has come down, and now the government the Hasina government asked for $4.7 billion from the IMF. This government has made an addition, has asked for a little more. So the country is not in good shape. Small factories are closing down. Businesses are not working, and people can't be paid in these private business establishments.
So,
So
can I have
we have.
concluding remarks from all three of you? Basically, what does the future hold for Bangladesh and the region?
Is that for me?
Yes, Mr. Hassan, you can go first, and
Okay.
then you can all of you can
Okay.
follow. Yeah.
Well, the future. Well, I have always believed that we in Bangladesh have passed through a lot of dark phases in life. 1971, and then the period after 1975. But then we did see things change. So what is happening in Bangladesh now, is a passing phenomenon. It's dangerous. Yes, we are up against enemies again. We are again, like as we were in 1971. our people, 170 million now, we are all in internal exile. But then most of us, a majority of the people of Bangladesh, they remain secular, and they are optimistic that the country will return to secular government, to the principles of 1971. And I was encouraged, I'll put it this way, I was encouraged by a video clip today of a young student of Dhaka University. She was telling a television interview. He asked him whether conditions in Bangladesh were good today, and she was emphatic about it. She was hardly 20 or 21 years old. She said, "No, things are worse than they were in Hasina's time." And then she said, "We want Sheikh Hasina back because she gave us a strong economy, she gave us infrastructure, she gave us security, and we have none of these things in Bangladesh today. We want her back." So I
That's
have
very well
confidence
put.
in the people of I have confidence that the people of my country will go back to a situation where we can reclaim the Bangladesh as we saw it emerge in 1971.
That's interesting. Mr. Kumar, I was also quite heartened to see Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor in the US, actually saying that, pulling up Mohammed Yunus for the human rights violations. And of course, the readout from what the US said and what Bangladesh said are two completely different versions of the conversation. But it is also, I I think the US should take on some kind of a larger role because they have allowed a favorite of the Biden administration to take over the government and who has turned a blind eye to these atrocities being committed across the country. Do you think that's a possibility? I mean, will we see the US prodding Bangladesh a little more?
Well, I'm not too sure. In fact, with the new administration, the Trump administration, I think perhaps I would say that the danger is that the US may just tend to look away from countries which they feel are unimportant, as they did in Afghanistan till it was too late. And similarly with Bangladesh, people in Washington hardly have the I think may not have the time and the patience to bother about what's happening in a country like Bangladesh. And then when there is a deterioration, then it is we who will bear the sort of the consequences. So yes, I mean all those who have, be it the US, be it other Western countries, who have, by all accounts, backed Professor Yunus and his dispensation, I think they should also equally be alive to the dangers of the situation getting completely out of control and, radical elements, etc., hijacking the situation, in which case the so-called Bangladesh Spring might turn into a Bangladesh winter, just like the Arab Spring
Ah,
and the
that's
Arab
beautifully
winter.
put.
So there is a danger, and I think all those who have a stake in the well-being of Bangladesh had better, I think they should not take things for granted.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Captain Bansal, I know you don't see a blockade of Chittagong port being, an important factor in putting pressure on Bangladesh. But what can we do apart from, a statement about Sheikh Hasina? Should we also be a little worried because I mean this access that Bangladesh provides into not just the northeast but to the rest of our country is also, in fact, through China, which is sitting on our borders, also very worrying. What do you see as the end game here?
See, firstly, let's be very clear. Why I said Chittagong port blockade is not a viable option, because that would be an act of war. Please understand,
Yes,
blocking a country
that's
is
right.
an act of war. Certainly not desirable. Bangladesh is a friendly country. We have so much of goodwill within the population. Of course, there is a section. Please understand, as I said, 20 to 30% of population of Bangladesh would vote for Sheikh Hasina and Awami League anytime. Similarly, there
Hmm.
is 20 to 30% of Bangladesh's population which was always anti-liberation. Unfortunately, that's a reality because
Yeah.
A large chunk of people stayed in Pakistan who were repatriated, brought back subsequently. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes of Sheikh Mujib was to actually accommodate some of them into the armed forces. The people who actually supported Pakistan during the liberation war or remained of their own free will in Pakistan should not have been allowed to stay in Bangladesh. The Biharis should have been expatriated. They did not do that. In fact, that's where the problem is. And of course, all the elements who were anti-liberation, it's only Sheikh Hasina's government which started taking actions against them. So as far as future is concerned, I have no doubts Bangladesh's future, if it continues this way, is going to be bleak. Please understand, economic crisis emanates. Bangladesh's major export item is apparels. Bangladesh is the second largest apparel exporter in the world. Now, Bangladesh doesn't produce any bale of cotton. Now, it's actually importing things and sending. So it's actually the human capital which was actually allowing it to emerge as a main exporting hub. For that, you need an environment which is liberal, which allows peace, which allows order. Now, if this sort of a situation, when you see radical Islamists capturing power, who would want to come in Bangladesh to place an order? Which international company would want to come and order? Where would they get cotton from? Bulk of the cotton comes from India, the yarn, etc. Everything comes from here. So you can curtail so many things. In fact, as far as essential requirements of Bangladesh is concerned, most of them comes from here. The entire protein input of Bangladesh comes from the cattle that is actually smuggled from India. Unfortunately, if our security agencies could be active and ensure, you could completely blockade that smuggling which is going on. So there are a lot of things which can be done. There is no doubt that if Bangladesh has a regime like this, it will not only pose a big threat to India, but also to the entire region in a very, very big way. And we need to do whatever we can to ensure that this regime is eliminated. Even if you have an election and BNP comes, that's acceptable. Because if there is an election today, to my mind, BNP would come to power. A democratic dispensation is acceptable. But you can't have a sham administration, a sham
imposed on us.
organization which has captured power, being run by rabid Islamists with the facade of Mr. Mohammed Yunus. So that's what is happening. And I think we need to get out of it. We need to impress upon not only the United States, but the so-called Western liberals who are rejoicing in Mr. Yunus's coming, that this is he is certainly not Robespierre or Dante, and not even Lenin or Trotsky. He is just, it is just another facade of what's happened in Syria and Afghanistan. So what is happening in Bangladesh is nothing what happened earlier in Kabul and what happened subsequently in Damascus. So we need to be careful about it. We need to ensure that this regime does not last long. Whichever way we have to do it, we need to do that.
Very well put, Captain Bansal. Of all the countries in the South Asian neighborhood, developments in Bangladesh, our once trusted neighbor, will no doubt top India's agenda in 2025. Thank you very much, Mr. Badrul Ahsan. Thank you, Mr. Kumar and Captain Bansal. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Thank you, viewers, for watching Global Express. Please click on the new Indian Express and the Global Express icon to watch and share. Thank you.